Hello.
Nice. Okay.
Awesome.
So welcome again for the ones that are trickling in. For the ones that are here, I'm sorry you're gonna have to deal with me for another 30 minutes. And right now for this panel, we're gonna talk about the building and development of a crypto native BlackRock, which is pretty exciting because that was my former company. So I would love to see how you guys totally destroy them at some point. Anyway, to get this ball rolling, how about we just give a quick intro, 30 seconds to a minute about who you are, what your protocol does. I can start with you, man.
Me?
Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Mike Taormina. I'm co-head of institutional business at Index Cooperative, which is the leading source of on-chain crypto index products. We're a decentralized community of content and growth marketers, crypto experts, engineers, and fintech TradFi refugees like me, all working to make crypto investing simple, easy, and accessible for everyone. We do that with a product suite that appeals to many different types. We have buy and hold investors that can get access to decentralized finance, metaverse, data economy. We have a crypto starter product that we did with Bankless called BED Index, which is a third ETH, BTC, and DPI, our DeFi product. And then we have products for more active traders. That's our Fly series. You can get exposure to, leverage exposure to ETH and to BTC with a single token. And all in, today those products have a TVL of about $400 million.
Wow, you're quite the spokesperson for IndexCube.
That was great, yeah.
Hey everybody, my name is Felix Feng and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Set Protocol. We build infrastructure for different types of delegated management products. One of the big kind of like users of Set Protocol is IndexCube, in which Set Protocol powers a lot of the different index products, leverage products, etc. that IndexCube offers. So we've been, a very excited kind of partner to IndexCube kind of through its whole development, and we're excited to see kind of the continued growth of IndexCube.
And last but not least, Anastasiya.
Hey guys, and thank you so much for accommodating having me virtually. Really appreciate it. So my name is Anastasiya, and I come from Crimea, the region that you guys might have heard of on the news recently. It's kind of that contested thing that's been between Ukraine and Russia. And so I kind of experienced actually firsthand what it means to be excluded from a lot of things, including economic participation. And that was one of the things that I got excited by within PieDAO, which is the project I'm currently contributing to, and its mission. I never really understood why wealth maximization was something that was reserved for the few and only for those who were kind of originally wealthy. And the idea that that can be brought to people regardless of their geographic location, their wealth status, as long as they have a computer and internet connection is really exciting. So PieDAO is focusing on creating these diversified portfolios that also give you passive income through active strategies deployed on the underlying assets. And then before that, I was part of Fabric Ventures as one of the co-founders, one of the funds that were the earliest in Europe investing in Web3.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. So just to get the ball rolling, if you look at the traditional world, the AUM that is allocated, like index products, is just humongous. Like pretty much like every average investor invests in the stock market through like an index product. And now more and more you start to see these bigger players, the BlackRocks and the Vanguards and the Fidelities of the world, providing crypto exposure to their clients in the form of indices. So as these players start like rolling into this space, how do you see crypto native indices competing with these legacy people?
So I would say three ways. So the off-chain products that you're seeing in the market today are trusts, limited partnerships, ETFs, eventually. And what we're offering, I mean, when I think of those, I think they trade during certain hours. They're less liquid. They come often with higher fees if they're crypto products. And if you think about our products at Index Cooperative, it's less expensive. It's way more liquid because you can get in and out in a matter of blocks. You have some news last night about China. You want to sell your DPI, you can sell your DPI. You can get out. You can't do that with a regular product, right? And it's also more productive. You can actually lend and stake your DPI assets in the DeFi ecosystem, which you can't do with the regular product. I'd say another thing that makes us different, that's going to allow us to better compete with the legacy players, is how intimately tied into the ecosystem we are. We have some owls here from the Cooperative, one in particular who is working on tons of partnerships in the space, and as a result, we know a lot of the players in the space and are attracting methodologists like Bankless and DeFi Pulse to work for us. That's a big competitive advantage. But the number one competitive advantage, why I'm so bullish on Index Cooperative, is our community. It's the number one asset. It's the number one competitive advantage. You basically have super fans on our product they're getting the word out all over the world. A BlackRock just doesn't have that.
Felix, anything to add?
Wow, that is really well said.
Smooth.
You're taking away all of my content. That said, I think one of the things that's really exciting is that these different products, the BlackRocks and the Vanguards and the Index Group, they live in different universes. The way that I like to think about it is that, I would use the internet as an analogy, where in the pre-internet world, we had like mail and like documents. We had kind of legal documents as well. And in the online world, we're able to build these different types of products that are like email and like e-docs, like you can message anybody instantly. They have all these features that are so much better. And in this internet kind of first world, you have programmability and interoperability. These are, and kind of accessibility to anybody in the world. So the really cool thing about kind of these internet native kind of index products compared to existing ones is that once you deploy something, it's available to the whole world instantly. Whereas with traditional products, typically they're offered, like with certain brokerages or in a certain jurisdiction at a time. And that's what I'm really excited about. And the thing is that right now, the financial ecosystem, DeFi, is pretty much as small as the internet was in like 1994 and 1995, right? What I'm excited about is the explosion and the growth of this industry. And I think that will be fueled by things like community. I think it'll be fueled by the interoperability and the open source nature of things. Like anybody can fork anything and build on top of it. I think that's why we're going to see kind of this very nascent ecosystem grow a lot. And I think that index products are going to kind of help carry that along. And these are going to be products that are offered in this crypto native way. Like people email each other when they're both online, right? You can't send a physical mail to someone in an email. And I think it's the same thing where many of the users of index products are actually crypto native. They serve retail people all around the world where most kind of like BlackRock or Vanguard products are not available. In addition to that, you get to do so much more, like what Mike said in terms of like staking and using your products on like lending protocols and other things like that. And I think another exciting thing that in terms of adoption is that these products are being adopted by DAOs, which are internet native organizations. Like no DAO is going to go off chain, like negotiate with a BlackRock in real life and then purchase a product. It doesn't work like that. So I think basically the interoperability, the programmability, and this new paradigm that's being created, I think that's what makes a big difference.
Anastasiya, anything to add?
I'm really FOMOing not being there and not being able to kind of jump in with all this energy. Actually being on the screen here really sucks. But no, I think you guys really said it pretty well. Couple things I'd love to add is, one, like I definitely agree that this new asset class obviously requires a completely different organizational structure. And as in traditional funds, we're seeing everything done by small teams. Obviously here, being DAO governed, it means that you're actually benefiting from thousands of creative minds. And one thing I would actually bet on in here is that the actual process of hiring and the selection process of who goes into those teams at traditional funds is pretty interesting, right? So if you think about it, there's a fundamental problem there. The hiring is very standardized. It's very exclusive. You've got to have some brand name universities behind your back. You've got to be from specific backgrounds, know the right people, probably have some investment banking background, all of that jam that we're so used to. I come from a VC background and I've seen how difficult it is to break in. Coming from Crimea, it was like a pain in the ass to get in, but let alone in traditional sort of funds that are non-crypto. And I think, the core difference to quality of products is going to be partly dependent on that quality of people who curate the products, right? Because we're able to cast the net so much wider, and we're able to actually benefit from the collective wisdom of people all across the globe with completely different backgrounds. Half of them are going to be pseudonymous, right? Like at PieDAO, we actually have a bunch of people who we don't even know their names. They're just, there, they're providing their input, and it's amazing, and we're loving it, and we don't really care who they are or where they are. So I think that's going to be a huge differentiating point.
Yeah, of course. And I think crypto, allows you to create some like pretty cool stuff in terms of like the financial instruments that like these protocols can create. So what are some characteristics or advantages that a crypto native index has that are not replicable in the traditional world?
You want to take this one first?
Yeah, you go after. You steal everyone's thunder.
I actually like it when you give the straightforward stuff and the pitch, and then I have to like somehow make up something after the fact. So actually, I'll let you go first.
Okay.
And then
Kick it off, Mike. Yes.
All right, so we're comparing, say a product like DPI to
Bitwise DeFi index, for example.
I was going to say, yeah, okay, we'll do that. And also like a SPY product because
Sure.
it's like, right?
Yeah.
So, with a regular ETF, there are authorized issuers, but you guys are not that, right? But anyone that buys DPI can effectively mint and redeem their own tokens. You can't show up to, say, E-Trade and have your one SPY share and unlock 500 subcomponents, but actually you can do that off of SET. So you come to SET with your DPI token and you can unlock the 16 sub-tokens or governance tokens that comprise the index. The other thing is you have full control of the assets, which I think is going to be appealing increasingly to institutions, right? I think it's appealing right now to retail investors. At any time, you can get out of a position or into one. And as I alluded to earlier, there are things you can do you could never, so going back to with an ETF, Sunday night, you want to make a trade, that's just not something most people can do, right? Maybe get futures exposure if you're an institution, but a retail investor can't do that. And then going back to you want to yield farm, lend, stake, there's all these opportunities that DeFi allows you to do with tokens like a DPI that you just couldn't possibly do with an off-chain product.
Felix?
wow, always make it difficult for me.
You asked.
You're starting next time. I'm going to give you a heads up.
Felix is actually the founder of Index Cooperative and launched it in October last year.
Thank you. I think there's a number of things that make it pretty unique, in terms of compared to traditional products, on top of all the things that he said. You kind of mentioned some of the 24/7 nature of it. Anybody in the world can create redeem, which is typically only available to authorized participants. I think one of the things you start alluding to is the extrinsic productivity of the product, which is that you can take it and then typically lend it out. You can put it, in a liquidity pool like Uniswap, et cetera, make it useful. I think one of the things that wasn't touched upon was one, like asset selection itself. I think that we do take inspiration from traditional kind of like ETF players where they actually work with a third party for their methodology. We think that that has been mapped over. But one of the things that is interesting is that you can use the entire universe of DeFi and into kind of your asset constituent selection, right? I think that typically the traditional players might look for something bigger or need a certain amount of liquidity or has to be on a centralized exchange or something like that. But anything in DeFi is actually fair game. The second thing that's really interesting is that the underlying assets can actually be potentially place in what we call intrinsic productivity, which is putting the underlying assets to work. This isn't activated in DPI today, but it is possible where you can actually, for example, use the underlying tokens to earn native yield. So for example, if you have SNX, synthetics token, that can be staked and you can earn that yield and compound it over time. Or like a KNC, you can actually stake it and do voting and earn the yield as well. I think typically in ETFs, you call that like securities like lending, where you actually like lend underlying, and a lot of that yield or the lending actually goes back to kind of the end users. So I think that's a pretty unique aspect where you can probably utilize the underlying assets as well.
Anastasiya, anything on your end?
Yeah, actually, to just build a little bit on that intrinsic productivity point, I do think it's a huge differentiating point. We've actually kind of changed our entire product partly because of that. We started off being based on balancer pools, and we've actually transformed that into a different architecture that allows for that intrinsic productivity to be utilized. And actually, we have now 4 products out of the 8 that are currently actively within that and that are being productively used. And I think that's pretty cool. So, like for example, in the DeFi space, the DeFi plus L, which is like the large cap ecosystem, is being used productively with its underlyings. And what I really love about the whole space is that all of that is kind of money Legos, and you can actually put that module into another one, which can then comprise something wider like DeFi++, which covers the wider ecosystem, the small, the large, sort of like all of the different tokens within it. And so that composability is another thing that I think is very unique. You can create products that are very niche, that serve a particular type of investors, and then you can put them together into wider products that are very risk averse, that are serving a much wider kind of new coming type of audience, which I think is very cool. And then lastly, in terms of the actual organization and how you incentivize the community, I think we have so many tools at our disposal to incentivize the community to select the right products and to actually be in it for the long term. As an example, I'm a huge fan of the concept of native staking of the governance token in order to actually link every individual within the community much tighter with the project and give them the right voice. So with PieDAO, we're actually going to roll that out very soon. And yeah, stay tuned for that. But I think it's going to be pretty exciting. People would actually be able to stake the governance token for a given number of months. And their governance power will depend on that. And so they wouldn't be able to participate unless they stake, which I think is actually quite important in terms of the value alignment. And then they would be able to benefit from all of the fees that the protocol generates. Of all of the fees that PieDAO makes, they rightfully belong to the people who make the decisions, right? So that I think again is one of those mechanisms that exist within the DeFi space that would never be available to traditional institutions.
Yeah, totally. And Felix, you touched on a question that I've had, and I really have no idea what it's all about. But a lot of the index products that are currently available for crypto investors follow the same traditional construction methodologies, right? Like cap-weighted kind of stuff. And I think in this specific example, you can draw a lot of that finance theory into crypto native products. But are there any advantages that crypto allows you to do in order to modify the construction of your financial instruments? It's a bit of a curveball there. So.
Yeah, that is a curveball.
Any ideas?
Man, that's a good question. Off the top of my head, I don't have anything as of now. Yeah. I think that I think there's a ton of like new products that people are coming up with overall. But I do want to take a step back and think about kind of like what is the scope of what we're doing and how does that expand, right? I think that in terms of applications, or at least financial applications, a lot of what we're doing like in DeFi today is just kind of like porting over what has existed into kind of like this DeFi world, correct, right? So you have like exchanges, you have decentralized exchanges, you have index funds, decentralized like each exchange rate products, etc. So a lot of the obvious stuff is coming about. But one of the really exciting things about this new space is that we're going to be able, due to this technology, we're going to be able to invent a lot of new stuff that hasn't existed before. For example, on the internet, we had ported over email and all these like obvious applications, but then who could have imagined stuff like TikTok or like Snapchat? I think in the same way, we're going to have some like weird stuff, like Uniswap is something that doesn't exist in the traditional financial world. So I think in the same way, like we're going to be kind of thinking and brainstorming and imagining new things. That said, the vision, I guess, in terms of product vision of like Index, we began with kind of just like index products, right? But then it's already expanded from there. We think we kind of were inspired by a traditional kind of like financial markets and saw that that, in terms of exchange-traded products, it was not limited to index funds. Some of the most voluminous products include things like leverage indices. Hence, we launched kind of the 2x series. We have to do inverse, et cetera. Like, we are inspired by things like volatility indices. We see like bond ETFs as things are popular as well. So, I mean, those are some of the more obvious things. But I think as we kind of explore this space a bit more, we're going to find like other types of things as well. For example, some of the things that we're looking at are kind of like yield-bearing like products and tokens and whatnot, and those are things that we're exploring. And as the space matures, there's going to be new types of structured products that are possible that we'll be looking to.
Yeah, totally. Because that's I'm sorry for that, Coral, by the way, because I did a little bit of research on Index Coop a while ago when I joined Messari, and it was a very natural transition for me because I'd seen these products in traditional finance quite a bit. So I was just really curious if there was like an extra layer that crypto could provide in order to make this like super incredibly cool products. But I guess we'll find out in a few years. Another question, is this idea of like meta governance, right? And I don't know if any one of you wants to define what meta governance is for everyone here. Since you're like smooth talker over here, man, what is meta governance?
I'll take that. All right, fine. Meta governance in this context is the idea that when folks buy DPI, all of the tokens that are in DPI are actually voted on when there's a proposal for a given project by the index community, by the index token holders, right? So if there's a proposal put out on Aave, we all participate in the vote.
100%. So how do you envision this feature in your products adding more value to the index itself? Because now you're not just dealing with just returns, right? If you look at the SPY, you're just there for return exposure. Now you're talking about governance exposure. You're talking not only like price appreciation, but you also have the governance. So how do you see that meta governance playing a role in the way you construct these products? Felix, you're up.
Sweet. You actually, like, meta governance was actually inspired by kind of like what like Vanguard and BlackRock did. There are heavy participants in what is normally called proxy voting. I think that's the closest thing to meta governance in this example, which is that I think that there's like an enormous amount of capital in index funds. I think like 40-50% or something. Like, it's pretty crazy. And in fact, like these proxy voters, BlackRock, Vanguard, they actually will turn the tides in terms of significant kind of votes that need to be done whenever shareholder consents are like required, right? So I think that that's something that is, and I think the really cool thing is that usually with kind of like index holders, they're held by kind of long-term believers, right? And so typically the voting that is done is kind of in a very kind of long-term aligned way. So I think that typically with meta governance in this case, people would be voting in favor and alignment of what is like best for the project. And I think that's typically what most kind of DeFi and DAOs want, is long-term holders of your product that are in the best, that have the long-term interest. You don't want necessarily the short sellers and stuff. You want to help make the right decision. So that's kind of how I see it playing out, is that like Index Cube, if it were to be kind of like a massive kind of like holder of these underlying tokens, will do its best to govern these protocols with a long-term view in mind.
Mike, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're able to do, because we're accumulating more and more tokens, I'll give you an example. So we wanted to list DPI on Aave. We now have enough tokens to hit that, that threshold to get it up as a proposal. We're not going to be able to vote that in. It still is up to the Aave community to make that happen. But that's one way we can directly add value to our financial products, by actually getting onto an Aave which passed.
Anastasiya, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think one of the most critical things about meta governance is that it actually helps kind of mitigate the issue of low participation within DAOs that we are seeing today. Even though obviously this whole decentralized governance concept is pretty powerful and actually kind of defines the whole new type of organizations, it's still very low today. Like if you look at most DAOs, it's probably going to be within the low single digits today. And so I think what we're solving partly with meta governance is that you have this large holder, and all of these assets wouldn't be sitting idle. They would actually be use productively towards the future of that underlying asset. So I think it's a pretty powerful concept. We've included it actually as well in that in PieVault, the new architecture that also includes the yield farming and sort of like the intrinsic productivity, and we'll hopefully be seeing more of that. We're currently working on a committee who will sort of govern that and coordinate that issue, because it's not a simple thing to get the community to understand and vote on issues that are relevant to every underlying asset.
Yeah, of course. And now let's flip it over and say, like, have you experienced any issues with meta governance? Are there any roadblocks or anything that you're like, man, this is a painful part of having a crypto native index product? Is there anything like that, anything negative that comes with meta governance as well?
I mean, it's an obstacle. I wouldn't say it's negative, but if you think about it, the more protocols that we're voting on, and the more proposals that are put forth as the index grows, the more that's in there, right? It's just a ton of votes. So every week we have a team that will put forth, okay, here's what we got to vote on this week, and the people who are part of the community, it self-selects for folks that want to get involved with this type of stuff. But even the most excited people about governance hit a certain degree of fatigue. Right? There's so many votes. So one thing we did, and we'll see how this goes, this is relatively new, is we'll have a committee that if we don't hit quorum on a given proposal, they will step in and vote. And just in the way it works today at Index, it's 100% for or against at the end of the day. Like, it's binary, right? If we hit quorum and it's a majority in favor, all of the tokens will vote in favor. And so this committee helps to make sure that we're being engaged active members.
Felix?
Yeah, I only have one small thing to add, which is that I think the governance overload question is very real. Drawing from the BlackRocks and Vanguard's traditional finance, typically what they would do is they would actually farm out like the research of that to like other like companies. I don't know what the actual companies are, but there's a few that basically research the governance of like all the different projects, and I guess they'll like sell subscriptions or something, not to like Messari, if you will, to these companies to help inform them what to do. And typically they have a lot of power in terms of information that they provide to steer kind of decision making. And I think typically if the asset the BlackRock or Vanguard doesn't have an opinion, they'll typically default to whatever that kind of data provider suggests.
Anastasiya, anything on your end with regards to negative implications of meta governance?
There's actually one thing I'd like to mention, which is more of a kind of technical trade-off. And I'm sure you guys might face that when you start rolling out your yield strategies on the different assets. It's actually a bit of an issue when you're using the assets productively. They often cannot be used for meta governance because sometimes you're not able to include it in voting snapshots, all of that sort of stuff. So there's a bit of an coordination required there, where if you are staking, lending the assets within a particular pie, for example, in our case, then you have to make sure that they're going to be idle for the moment when you need to vote on a meta governance issue. And that's why we're creating a committee who will help just kind of make sure that the process itself is smooth. But otherwise, I think it's a pretty amazing concept, this kind of technicality aside.
Yes, of course. We have about 30 seconds to go. So really quickly, what are you guys really excited about, what you guys are building currently?
I think some of the things that are in the pipeline have moved to what Felix said before, away from just purely thematic and more towards the abstraction of strategies, but tokenizing it into a single, putting it into a single token. So yield strategies, for example, that's one that I'm personally really excited about, or moving away from market cap so that we're looking to other fundamentals to drive what is included in a given index. All that stuff I'm pretty pumped about.
Felix? What are you guys doing at Set Protocol you're really excited about?
Yeah, I think like following that roadmap and that vision, right? I think what we're excited about is being able to explore the unknown. So kind of what you talked about is like, what are some of the cool things that weren't possible yet? We want to figure it out. We want to be explorers. So in addition to the obvious stuff, we want to like get all that stuff done, of course, but we also want the room to be able to see like what else is possible. And we're excited about getting to a point where like we can do that.
Anastasiya, 5 seconds.
We're
Real
excited
quick.
to actually use the community properly. Most DAOs are not actually using it to the fullest, and we're trying to roll out this new staking initiative to make sure that we're aligning the wide community of thousands of people to the best of PieDAO's interest. So watch out for that.
Nice. Okay, we're way over time, so thank you so much for making the time, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all for coming.